In the last episode, we had just arrived at Stanley. We're staying here 3 nights and planning to do a day trip or 2 before we head to the ferry, which will be the end of our adventure. The next few days are forecast to be strong winds and rain, so we've opted for a cabin. Stanley's a pretty place with its protected little harbour, and the big lump of rock poking out into the sea, which is called the Nut, has a chairlift on it. Because of the strong wind, the chairlift isn't running, so we won't be going up to the top of the Nut to view Stanley from there. Stanley's a very manicured place, and there are lots of historic buildings. Many of them have been turned into accommodation, and there are still a few fishing boats that operate from here. We're getting blue sky in between the rain showers, and it's looking very pretty. Oh look, a baby seagull. That's something I rarely get to see. For some reason you only ever see the adults. The storm clouds and the hints of blue sky make a good background to the fishing boats sheltering in the harbour. There are a couple of serious sized boats here too. This one is unloading and it looks like it's big piles of scallops. Another rain shower chases us into this coffee shop. So we're forced to eat scones with jam and cream with our coffee. It's a sacrifice, but we struggled through it. Here comes the rain again. Fortunately, the showers pass through very quickly. Back in our cabin sheltering from the rain, the weather doesn't look all that promising for a day ride. So as the sun sinks slowly into the west, we contemplate what we're going to do tomorrow. We spent a whole day sheltering in the cabin, staying out of the rain. But the day after we thought, bugger it, let's go for a ride anyway. So we're off to do the Tarkine loop. This takes us out to the west coast to Arthur River, and then back through Smithton and back to Stanley. But the variable weather changes from variable to constant rain. But we think, well, how bad can it get? The weather is sure to break and we'll be able to dry out again. It's raining, the wind is howling above the trees, but fortunately we're relatively sheltered down in the forest. And if I could see out of my visor, which is now starting to get wet on the inside, this would be a very pretty road. Riding in the rain is such a joy. Don't you just love that experience when you feel your crutch getting colder and colder and you're thinking, is that just cold weather or am I starting to get wet? Pretty soon, there's no question about that. But because we're seasoned motorcycle riders, we just laugh at the rain and continue on and try to enjoy the scenery. I've ridden this road in dry weather and it really is a fantastic loop. But I'm beginning to think, are we complete idiots or just complete idiots for going out today? But by the time we get really wet, we're past the point of no return, so we may as well just continue on and finish the loop. The road basically follows the Arthur River down to the sea. so we keep getting glimpses of the river as the road crisscrosses over it. As we come towards the west coast, we come out of the forest and start to enjoy the full force of the wind as the rain blows up our necks and into our helmets. We've finally reached the West Coast Road. We can turn north now and start heading back towards Stanley. Arthur River's a pretty place on a fine day. It's just a small town with very few amenities. But its main claim to fame is that it's the end of the world. Yes, it's the most western part of Tasmania. So I head off down the gravel road to do the mandatory photos of this famous place. The road is surprisingly grippy, despite the wet weather. The wind is blowing from the west, so I'm able to park behind that hump of land and then walk out to the viewing platform. There's a little plaque out here that announces the end of the world, and if you look really closely you can see South America. But I can't even read the plaque in this weather, so looking at South America will have to wait for another day. It sounds a bit like I'm having a whinge about the weather, but really I'm not. It brings a wild, rugged beauty that you don't get on a clear, still, fine day. That's a job done. Time to head back to the main road and start heading back to Stanley. Just up the road from Arthur River, there's a little place called Marrowa, which has a pub. And it's about lunchtime, so we're going to stop here and warm up, dry out a bit and have some lunch. And they've very thoughtfully set a nice roaring fire for us to sit in front of while we're waiting for our lunch to arrive. And to make our little stay even more perfecter, I decided to have a nice light beer while I'm waiting. Does life get better than this? Oh goody, lunch has arrived. And what better meal can you have but bangers and mash on a cold, rainy day? Pure, unadulterated comfort food. With lunch over, we've dried out a bit, and we're now heading back to Stanley. Back to our nice, warm and dry cabin. Tomorrow, we head towards the ferry. But there's still a cracking ride ahead before we get there. Today's our last day in Tassie, so we're having breakfast and then packing up, ready to leave. The weather's still a bit unsettled, but the forecast says that it shouldn't be too bad today, so fingers crossed. This is the route we're going to take to get back to the ferry. On the map, this looks very boring. But it's far from that. That A, B, C, D places, small little back roads, absolutely fantastic riding road. But even the main road to Burnie is quite pretty this morning. Everything's green and clean. There are still some reasonable views along this main road, but really the coastline is quite ordinary, not much of a beach, and rocky. There's still plantation logging industry in Tassie, and these logs are heading for the wood chipper, I think. There's a port at Burnie that exports these chips. So we're heading up to a lookout that looks down on the town. We've still got our wet weather gear on, but the weather is being kind to us. In contrast to most of Tassie, Burnie is a very industrial looking town. We're off the main road now, we're heading south, doing that loop that goes right down and then back up north to Devonport. There are so many minor roads around this area. When you look at the map, you just don't realise what fantastic riding roads there are. Every road's a winner and can be explored a lot more than we did today. And because it's our anniversary ride, I'm taking Wendy to paradise. All she has to do is follow me. If you're watching this from somewhere like the UK, you probably think this is reasonably ordinary country, but to us this is a real treat to be riding through such green countryside. You've only got to see our previous trip video out west of New South Wales and Queensland to see the contrast. We saw this sign as we rode by, so we thought, okay, worth a stop, let's have a look. It's a short and pretty walk down to the falls, through all this lush fernery. It was here I had one last attempt at flying the drone. It was down in a valley and a little bit out of the wind. I couldn't take it very high, but at least we got some shots of the waterfall. Alright, that's enough of that. Time to trudge back up the path and head for the bikes. On the road again, and we're heading to the promised land. We stopped for a break at this place called Leven Canyon, but we found that it was too far to walk for our poor old bones, so we just had a stretch and moved on. Even with the video, it's difficult to capture how fantastic these roads are. The surface is smooth, there's hardly any potholes, and there's just one corner after another through the forest. And no traffic. I finally led Wendy to the promised land. No, this isn't a joke. This is actually a postcode name. And here's the actual post office. A little miniature post office, but it has its own postcode. And the specific place is Lower Crackpot, in the promised land. So we posted some letters to the grandkids, as you do. Lower Crackpot has a huge maze, and the village is actually a miniature village. The entry fee to the maze and village was just a bit too expensive for us, so we satisfied ourselves by having food at the cafe. This turned out to be a winner. Proper pasties and some salad and chips. What more could one want? Moving on, and we're nearly back to Devonport, so we stop at Sheffield for yet another break and take a few photos of the murals in the town. But getting our priorities right, first we stop at the bakery, and yep, I'll have one of those, thanks. And what a perfect cream bun it turned out to be as well. Real cream, nice fresh bun. I could do with a couple of those. There are murals in just about every flat surface in this town, but here's just a couple of examples. On the road again, and we were looking for somewhere else, but couldn't find it. Ah well, never mind. We're back at Devonport now and the boat's in. We only had to wait for a surprisingly short time and we were starting to board. One of the nice things about being on the bike is that they'll usually board us first. In no time at all, we're settled into our cabin, changed into some comfortable clothes, and now we can relax and just have a look around and enjoy the sights. The weather's been kind to us on this last day on the island, and it's been a cracker of a ride through some of the best roads and beautiful scenery that we've seen in the whole trip. Sure, it's been windy and I haven't been able to use the drone much, and because of the rainy weather we haven't been able to camp much, but all in all it's been a perfect holiday. And as we watch Tasmania recede, a little tear forms in the eye because this may well be the last time we tour in Tasmania on the bikes. I hope you enjoyed watching this series of videos of our adventure, but I can guarantee you that we had a lot more fun doing it. So get out there and have an adventure of your own.